welcome. It's another Confessions podcast from your friends at Drive Time on Radio 2. An audio array of terrible tales from the discerning Radio 2 listeners. Here we go then, with this week's concise collection, including a petty pet prank, a manky molar mishap, a careless connection conundrum, which is quite nice, and a tactical trust trip. I can't even remember that one myself. Anyway, who are you going to forgive? Here it all comes. This is Radio 2 and it's Drive Time Confessions. Thank you very much indeed. There is, on our Radio 2 Facebook page, there's a nice little image, nice little freebie for you to share, which kind of sums up and highlights some of the key points to learn from tonight's tale. Hamster Wheel of Misfortune is the title. It comes from Cheryl. Cheryl, thank you very much indeed for tonight's story. Haven't had a hamster tale for quite a while. Father Simon and the Holy Order. My confession takes me back to the 1980s, when my sister Karen and I were kids. She is, and always has been, 3 years younger than me. She's a costume designer in Leamington, and nowadays we get on rather well. She's well-adjusted and quite stylish in a frumpy kind of way, and has kids of her own now. They play with my kids quite well, though I notice they are all beginning to exhibit the same mean, competitive instincts that afflicted the two of us all those years ago. You'd have thought, with a 3-year age gap, we'd just let each other get on with our lives and not be too bothered whether Visage were a better vanguard for the new romantics than Depeche Mode, or which Kemp brother was likely to notice us as we waited outside a London hotel that Spandau Ballet was staying at. Answers obviously Depeche Mode and neither of them. This rivalry extended, I'm ashamed to say, to pets. Karen loved animals almost as much as boys in foppish clothes. She had a pair of rabbits, but they died in a fox attack that left her traumatised week before some exams. O-level mocks, I think. She was so upset that my mum decided she needed a rabbit substitute, or else she'd flunk the exams. We still had a pet shop locally at the time, now an exotic lingerie shop, by the way, and I have a confession from there too, but that's for another time. And I was sent to see what pets might be available as a stopgap, a short-term calm your sister kind of thing. Well, I was attracted to the snakes, of course, but I knew that Mum wouldn't tolerate that and wouldn't find it very funny. There were small birds in cages, but Mum didn't want anything that squawked, so that was them done for, which left the hamsters. I've never particularly been a hamster fan, but they were fluffy and cute enough to impress my simple-hearted sister, which made them the obvious choice. I told my mother that I thought they'd be perfect, so I was given permission to buy 2, one for me and one for Karen. We knew my sister would instantly fall in love with her hamster, who would inevitably named Steve Strange or some other member of Visage, if indeed there were any. As I looked around the shop, I came across a cheeky little creature who was running in a wheel. When I put my face to the glass of his cage, he ran up to me, put his paws on the glass and started sniffing. It was a sign. This was the one for me.
Yeah, definitely a sign.
Yeah, right, Cheryl. Simple-hearted Cheryl, I think. Now I had to choose one for Karen. I'd had enough of pet shopping by then, so I just pointed at the hamster in the cage next to my one. Well, as predicted, my sister was indeed very happy, though wasn't sure about me also getting one, especially as mine seemed a lot friendlier than hers. Mine was called Dave, after Dave Garn from the mighty Depeche, while Karen surprised everyone by calling hers Toya. She said she had her reasons, rather mysteriously. Well, 2 months of feeding and clearing went on okay, with very little tension between Karen and I, and between Dave and Toya. But it was in the 3rd month of keeping the pets that things went downhill. Toya started losing her appetite and started to move slowly around her cage. There were other signs that all was not well too, but you don't want to know those.
Well, we can guess.
Thank you, Cheryl. It was decided that a trip to the vet was needed and an appointment was made, but sad to say, Toya never made it and moved on to that hamster wheel in the sky. Karen was sad all over again, but not as utterly distraught as I thought she'd be. She only spent a week crying this time, as opposed to the last mourning period, which was months and months and months. So, Father Simon, it is time to confess. This time, it might not go very well, by the way. You see, when I bought the hamsters, the old lady in the shop told me that the one I'd picked for my sister was the runt of the litter, and did suggest that I might want to buy another one more like mine, but I ignored her. She let me have the weak hamster for free, and I gave this one to Karen, my sister, and I kept the money.
What?
So you know the rest. Father Simon, I ask forgiveness, please, for the deed of keeping Mum's money. I have since hidden many pound coins in her house to make up for it, and from my sister, who to this day doesn't know that I gave her a weedy weak hamster on purpose, while keeping the sprightly one for myself. Sisters, eh? We had a whole run of these a few months ago, where sisters were doing it very badly to themselves, and this is another one from Cheryl, who. Remember, she's trying to console her sister whose rabbits had died in a fox attack, bought 2 hamsters, gave her sister the runty one, who she had been warned might not make it, and indeed the runty one didn't make it, and she kept the nice one to herself, but she'd still like your forgiveness.
Do you think that she did it for the money, or do you think the money was just a sort of added bonus?
I think she just,
She would have given her sister the runty one anyway.
I went to the shop, I did the hard work, maybe it'll only been a couple of quid.
It's really odd, isn't it? Because, I mean, why would you want your sister to cry for a week? What benefit?
Well, I don't think she did that. She just wanted the nice hamster for herself.
I know, but there were other hamsters that she could have given her sister.
Well, she was tired.
She's tired.
She'd been shopping along.
Couldn't be bothered to just look at another hamster. Too much energy. Poor sister. I mean, she had really bad luck with pets. First of all, the rabbit, and then the runty hamster.
Called Toya.
Called Toya. Even bad. Yeah, worse luck. I don't know. I just can't forgive you. I can't. Sorry, Cheryl.
No.
I just can't forgive you on this one.
Toya, meet Dave Garn. Dave Garn, Toya. What do you say, Brother Matthew?
Well, I say, which of us, when faced with the option of buying a perfectly healthy hamster and getting one for free and being able to spend that money on whatever you want, which of us would not say, do you know what, I'll take the free one, and it'll present a challenge to my sister to be able to see if she can resurrect this runt of the litter, which obviously won't happen. And
she can resurrect it?
Yes, yeah.
Was she some kind of miracle worker?
Absolutely, she'd get the defibrillator in on the... Don't do that at home, kids.
No.
So I'm going to forgive, because actually she sounds a bit of a wet, this other sister. I mean, get over it. So I'm going to forgive for that reason alone, Cheryl, and also because you're now going to get it from your sister anyway, so you don't need any more punishment from us.
I think that's certainly going to happen. Into the collective we are then with Sister Rebecca and Brother Matthew, and the Venerable Deadly
very good afternoon to you.
joins us as well.
Or
putting
evening?
on.
No, afternoon, because it's light still, isn't it? Here, where we are. Yes.
And most places where everyone else is deadly. On the button as ever, a valuable addition to the collective.
Well, unless you're in the Far East or something.
Oh, well, we're not concerned about people who don't pay the licence fee.
Oh,
are we?
yes.
So here we go then, with tonight's confession, which is called The Tooth Will Out. That's what it's called, and it comes from Shona. Thank you, Shona. Dear Simon and the Courteous Collective. I'm a well-respected dental hygienist working somewhere in the East Midlands. My moment of unaccustomed, unprofessional behaviour happened 13 years ago on the first day of a new job. I had until then been a member of one of the military services, and to say we were trained to work to a high standard of care was putting it mildly. We military hygienists clean teeth with, well, military precision. This was okay, as most of our patients were fit young men and women who, quite frankly, could take a fine, deep tooth cleaning with minimum fuss or anaesthetic. Come to that. So apart from accidentally sitting on one poor patient's face one day, I misjudged where I left my stool. I'm not quite sure I understand that. Anyway, I had never caused alarm to any of my patients and considered myself a good hygienist, ready for the new challenges that civilian life would bring. The morning was uneventful. I treated my first child, pregnant lady, older couples, people with medical problems, that kind of thing, and I was more than pleased when they commented that it was the most thorough scale and polish that they'd ever had. With hindsight, perhaps not all of them were necessarily as thrilled as I was. My first patient of the afternoon was an elderly gentleman with, shall we say, limited dentition, by which I imagine means grotty teeth. But as he explained to me, he managed, and he would like just to keep his remaining teeth for as long as possible, thus avoiding dentures. He was happy to see a hygienist, as he believed that we could help him do just this. After examination, I told him that all he needed was a good clean, and I duly started. He had a particularly wobbly molar tooth in the top right-hand side, and before I knew it, there was a tiny sort of sucking noise.
Oh, no.
I had actually pulled the tooth out of its socket.
Oh,
I was horrified. I could see the whole tooth right down to its roots, and it was completely dislodged. Only the tip of my scaler was stopping it from dropping it straight out of his mouth and onto the floor. This would have been the perfect time to apologise, get him to bite on some gauze and ask him to wait while I gave my professional indemnity guys a ring. But I didn't. I had just noticed that the patient actually hadn't felt a thing. He was still lying back, mouth trustingly wide open, waiting for me to carry on. Well, what to do? I spied a bin in the corner, but quickly dismissed that idea, as even if he hadn't noticed it then, my accidental extraction would be slightly obvious come tea time. And then it came to me. I pushed the tooth back into place, and another little sucking noise later, it seemed to stick. I gave it a nudge, and all appeared to be fine. All I had to do now was hope that the rinse at the end passed without incident. It did, and the patient was none the wiser. Out of slight guilt, I did at least mention, that upper right molar looks a little bit funny. You should let your dentist have a look at that before too long. The patient thanked me kindly for the most thorough clean he'd ever had, which is clearly a phrase which Shona has heard a lot. Thank you, that was really thorough. The following week... yes, that's right. The following week, still racked with guilt, I checked the chap's notes. Indeed, he had done as I asked and seen his dentist. Consequently, the dentist had advised the man that the tooth was indeed utterly hopeless and really needed to come out. I bet that took a lot of struggling. The patient was given an injection and charged for the extraction. It didn't end there. As this had been the patient's last top back molar, he would now need a denture to fill in the space and give his bottom teeth something to grind on. The final bill was extraordinarily pricey, to say the least. So... it is with a guilty conscience, even now, that I ask forgiveness for not being brave enough to admit to the man when I first accidentally removed his tooth. Had I done this, it would have saved him the bother of a second visit to the practice that week, the pain of an injection he may well have not needed, and the cost of the extraction, as obviously I wouldn't have charged for mine, and perhaps hastening the time toward when he finally needed a denture. Perhaps I should also seek forgiveness from the other poor chap who I accidentally sat on. But that's another confession.
Yeah.
That's another confession, but it's Shona. She's a military hygienist, and she accidentally knocked this guy's remaining molar out. But it made a sucking noise, and it went back in again. What do you think, Sister Rebecca?
Well, the tooth would have come out anyway.
Yes.
So all she caused him to... I mean, the only pain she caused him was that he had to pay for the... we had to have the injection, and he had to pay for the extraction. But he would have had to have the denture anyway, wouldn't he?
Well, it might have hung around. This tooth might have hung around if she hadn't been busying around.
Doesn't sound
poking
like
away in his
it.
mouth.
Doesn't sound like it, does it? I mean, you know, it sounds like he could... in fact, she probably saved him, you know, some... maybe he could have broken it on a chicken bone later on.
Well...
I'm sure everyone listening to this is kind of feeling their molars with their tongue. I've been doing that all the way through the confession. I think I probably would have done the same thing. I think I would have been horrified if I'd sucked somebody's molar out by mistake. So I forgive you, Shona.
And now we have Brother Matthew.
Yeah, I'm no dental expert, but I'm going to say that tooth was on its way out anyway, and also I've got a bit of a problem with hygiene. Every time I go to the hygienist, I just get moaned at. Basically I can't do anything for this woman. I can't floss enough. I'm brushing the wrong way. I'm brushing with the wrong kind of brush. I'm not brushing for long enough. So I've had enough of I've had enough of the hygienist, frankly, and for that reason alone, you're not getting forgiven.
They play the good... we've done this before on Confessions. They do the bad cop, good cop. The hygienist is supposed to be the good cop, and then the dentist goes...
It's completely the other way around with me.
Okay.
Completely she just moans at me the entire time.
Have you tried changing?
No, because I'm
Have
lazy.
you tried flossing?
No. Life's too short.
You should. You really, really should. This is BBC Radio 2 and another Drive Time confession. This one coming from Phil, Father Simon, and the Most Admirable Assembly. My story is from 1987, when I was a serving member of Her Majesty's Royal Air Force and a mere 18 years old. I was based on the northern edge of Suffolk, and being of that age and of that time, did not have a motor vehicle to call my own. However, I often was fortunate enough to get the weekends off duty, and had managed to work out that if I was able to get a Poets' Friday, which, as you know, is push off early tomorrow Saturday, I could jump in a taxi and get to the nearest railway station, Thetford, to catch the 5 p.m. train. Change at Peterborough, slightly too much detail at this point, Phil, anyway. Change at Peterborough and be back to my parents' house with enough time to dump my washing and be in the pub by 10 o'clock. Easy, and life was good. On the particular Friday in question, I'd managed to get the early stack and hot-footed it to Thetford train station. The train from Norwich to Peterborough was on time. Okay, right.
This is great.
There was...
loads of detail, lovely.
The cafe was working. Barring any snag with the connection, I would be home before 9 with no problem at all. When the train arrived at Thetford, I embarked, kit bag over my shoulder, such was the style in those days, and stumbled and bumped into a carriage. Now, as it turned out, this train was rammed. It was packed full of people. In fact, I had never seen it so full, and resigned myself to the fact that I was going to be standing for the entire journey. It was at this point that fate started to play its cards. A very attractive lady, statuesque and beguiling, offered me a seat next to her. I gratefully accepted, bundled my kit bag into the luggage rack and squeezed in next to her. I thanked her for her kindness. We started to talk. She told me about how she was on her way home to Nottingham, how she'd only been away from home once before, how she'd been on a training course in Norwich with her insurance firm for the whole week, how she'd only been married a year, how her husband was meeting her at Nottingham Station, taking her for an anniversary meal, how it was all planned, and how she was nervous that she might have been away for too long. Plus, she was very, this is the main source of her concern, unfamiliar with the whole train network at Peterborough Station.
What's he going to do?
What is going to happen?
Well, I'm not familiar with the network at
Do you not know
Peterborough
what happens at
Station?
Peterborough?
No.
Well, I'll give you a map in a moment.
Right, lovely.
As the train pulled into Peterborough, I saw my chance to repay her for letting me have a seat. I knew this station like the back of my hand and thought she might appreciate a little guidance. And maybe I was still bewitched by her beauty, but anyway, without further thought of my own connection worries, my chivalry kicked in. "I know Peterborough Station," I said manfully. "I'll carry your bags if you like and direct you so that you don't get lost." Well, her face lit up. She looked so relieved. "That would be so wonderful." She beamed. So with my kit bag still over my shoulder, and her suitcase in my hands, I marched off the train with a confident air in my step. Very quickly, being the Peterborough Station expert that I am, I found the electronic display board and found her train. "Platform 3, there you go, follow me," I said. We made our way to platform 3, and sure enough, there was the train. A modern train of the day, one of the ones with electric doors. Phil adds, for no apparent reason. I checked the time, still a few minutes to go before departure, so I stepped onto the train and stowed her cases. The lady thanked me for my help. "No problem," said I. "Enjoy your evening and happy anniversary." I bowed. I thought of maybe sneaking a little kiss on the cheek, but I thought that seemed...
That's outrageous.
No way!
But I thought that was out of place.
Yes, well done, Phil. Yeah.
We said our farewells and stepped off the train. The doors made a beep, beep, beep sound and closed, and then something terrible happened. The train started to move out. Well, half of it did anyway. How was I supposed to know that there is a platform 3A and a platform 3B? How was I supposed to know that the train at platform 3 splits into two? How was I supposed to know that the northern half of the train heads to Nottingham, the southern half heads to London's King's Cross station non-stop? Well, maybe if I'd studied the platform display board more carefully and not been in such a hurry to selfishly make sure that I was okay first. Anyway, I had put the nice lady on the southern half, and it was heading out of the station, and with every passing second, taking her further and further away from the one she loved. The man who was probably this very minute driving across the River Trent to Nottingham Station, heart bursting and all excited about the night that he had planned. A man who maybe had waited too long for the many temptations that Nottingham has to offer. Anyway, I don't know.
Yeah.
I still remember the horrified, nay, terrified look on her face as she departed off towards London. I just stood on the platform watching. I felt awful, but I did manage a wave and a theatrical shoulder shrug.
Oh, brilliant.
As I mouthed, "Sorry." Then I sprinted across the station to get my own train. Wasn't worth me missing my connection too. So forgiveness, look, really... Because with no mobile phone, she would have missed her husband and their anniversary meal, and in a sliding door kind of way, maybe their lives changed forever. I put her inadvertently onto the wrong train. Goodness knows what time she'd have got back to Nottingham from London that evening, and how much it would have cost. Also apologies and forgiveness, please, from her husband, who must have been stood waiting at Nottingham Station, worried, waiting for his new wife to return from her week-long conference in Norwich, where they're discussing insurance and things like that. On a plus side, I did get my connection. I did get to my parents.
Okay.
I got to the pub by 10, and I got all my washing done.
Well done.
Phil, I don't think we're bothering too much about your washing and your connection or your parents. But we are concerned about the beautiful lady and her tender marriage.
It was a
1
good
year.
title, Decoupling. That works very well,
Thank
doesn't
you very
it?
much
You know.
indeed. It was a master craftsman, a craftswoman.
I think Phil wasn't concentrating on the task in hand, which was to get her onto the correct train, wasn't it? He was obviously distracted by her beauty and by the question of whether he should try and sneak a peck on the cheek, which is why he got it so wrong. However, having said that, he didn't do it on purpose. He really meant well. So I think, even though he's a bit of a train spotter, I'm going to forgive you,
I
Phil.
liked all that detail about Thetford
okay.
and
But you're
Peterborough.
forgiven.
I don't think we'll get too many Peterborough station confessions in future. But anyway, what do you say, Brother Matthew?
These splitting trains are a nightmare, because I've fallen victim to this myself. You get on, you think you're on, and you think to yourself, I can't believe I've managed to get all these seats to myself. I thought this was going to be a really busy train. No one sitting near me. Great, I'm spreading out, and then find out that your train either isn't leaving or is going somewhere completely different. So I completely sympathise with that. However, she did obviously work it out as soon as they started pulling out the station. So it's not as if she will have stayed on the train all that way.
Non-stop to London.
Exactly. Oh, really? Was it all non-stop?
Non-stop to London. So she would have stayed on that
train all the way. In which case, I'm completely changing my mind. You're completely not forgiven. You should have looked at... I mean, who gets on the wrong part of the train? Only a fool.
It's confession time. We welcome... A distinguished if occasional brother. Hello, Nigel.
Hello, yes, a young supplicant.
Really?
Yeah, I think so. I think they're the ones who just drink a lot.
Good, OK. Already you're an asset to the collective.
Thank you.
Kerry sends in today's tale. Dear Father Simon and the non-judgmental and fair-minded collective. I'm not too sure about that. This harks back to 2003, when I was working as a waitress at a popular pizza-based restaurant. You'll see why you're here now. Yes. The general, it wasn't just because we like you, it's because it's got a food theme.
Thank you.
The general manager was a harsh old crone called Teresa. She was the sort of team leader who delighted in telling her staff off for no particular reason and spreading unconfirmed tittle-tattle. Her method of keeping her staff towing the line was based on a simple strategy. Fear. F-E-A-R, fear. I once annoyed her, and my punishment was to come in 3 hours before the restaurant opened, turn all the tables upside down, and scrape off all the discarded blobs of chewing gum that had been deposited there by grubby teenagers. This was her leadership style. One Saturday evening I was working a shift which Teresa was managing. I use the word loosely. She was up to her usual thing of not doing very much work and shirking all her responsibilities. Later that night, my colleague Henrietta and I had to go into her office. I can't quite recall the reason, but I can promise it was a genuine one. I think we were looking for something, and I assure you that what happened next wasn't pre-planned, and maybe it was just the forces of karma and all the things just and right coming together in perfect harmony, and the planets were in alignment. Allow me to set the scene. At the start of each shift, Teresa would always get changed out of her civvies, her outdoor clothes, in the office because the staff room wasn't good enough for her. And she'd leave them arranged on hangers in the office. On this fateful night, Henrietta and I had entered the empty office in the course of our duties in order to search for whatever it was. Our eyes darted around until, independently of each other and exactly the same moment, they came to rest upon the same item. This was the office stapler. Simultaneously and perfectly in sync, we looked firstly at the stapler, then we looked at each other, back at the stapler, and we knew what we had to do. Not a word passed between us, but we fed off the glee in each other's eyes. Clunk went the stapler. Clunk went the stapler again as we sealed the armholes in Tess's shirt. Clunk and clunk again it went as the bottoms of her jeans were closed and manacled together. The whole deed was committed in under 10 seconds before we flung the stapler back on the desk and fled, giggling deliriously from the act of rebellion we had just dared to undertake, and genuinely in fear of our lives. How we got through the rest of the shift without bursting out with laughter, we'll never know. But we finished at 10 p.m. and made our way to a social club where a colleague of ours was having a birthday bash. The other restaurant staff started to arrive later as they too finished their shifts. We were a happy bunch who got on well and socialised frequently, but on this particular night there was a distinct buzz in the air. I asked a fellow waitress, Anna, why everyone was so excited. She proceeded to regale me with the story of what had happened after the restaurant had closed. Apparently once Teresa had checked that the close down was satisfactory, she'd retired to the office to get changed, whilst everyone else had gone to the staff room. The office and staff room shared a thin wall. According to Anna, a clear scuff, 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 thud, and then a scream were audible from the office, stopping everyone in their tracks as they wondered what on earth could have caused such a peculiar noise. They didn't have to wait long to find out, because 10 seconds later, an incredulous Teresa appeared in the doorway of the staff room, screaming blue murder, her face dripping with tomato paste, a selection of hams, and some pineapple. She had come an absolute cropper. What had happened is this. She had taken a fresh pizza into the office for her tea and had placed it on the floor while she changed. Whilst attempting to put on her jeans, her foot encountered an unexpected blockage and she stumbled. Following a few futile skips in an attempt to remain upright, she had ended up in an undignified heap on the office floor, with her face smack bang in the middle of a large Hawaiian pizza.
Hey!
Some mozzarella had entered her nostrils, and the tomato paste and a selection of rocket was in her hair, according to eyewitnesses. I arrived at work the following day feeling a little apprehensive. I'd spent much of the previous night reenacting the crime in my head, trying to remember if we'd left any damning evidence behind. I was greeted at the restaurant door by another manager, Eric. It was not normal behaviour for a manager to be waiting at the door, and I glanced up at him fearfully. He was standing with his hands on his hips, trying to look furious, but this didn't last very long. As soon as he opened his mouth to tell me off, he started laughing. Teresa had left him a note describing the previous night's sabotage, and it hadn't taken Eric very long to work out who was responsible. To give him his dues, he had at least attempted to reprimand us, but he didn't really mean it. Henrietta was also at work by this time, and the three of us took a little bit of time to read out the note several times, literally crying with laughter. It didn't take long for the story to spread to every member of staff, and in the days that followed I lost count of the number of colleagues who thanked me, shook my head, or even my hand, before dissolving into laughter, just like that. I don't seek forgiveness from Teresa because she was a rotten old bat, and our actions that day made a lot of people very happy. Instead, I asked forgiveness from the poor, unfortunate members of staff who, in fear of losing their livelihoods, were forced to maintain straight faces for the next couple of weeks and not snigger every time they spoke to Teresa and imagined mozzarella coming out of her nose. Well, that's why it was called Pizza the Action, of course. That's tonight's tale. Nice little souvenir for you on Facebook. What do you have, Sister
Rebecca?
Rebecca?
It's a wonderfully slapstick image, isn't it? The idea of Teresa with her face in the pizza on the floor with her stapled up trousers. That's great. Stapled up trousers and sleeves. I've never thought of that one. Must use that one.
Good. Well,
Yeah.
you share an office with Matt and Alan
absolutely.
Dedico. That'll be
Just have to make
hilarious.
sure that Matt's,
Always getting undressed, obviously.
I love things like that, pathetically and childishly. I love little jokes on people like that. So, and she spread a little joy. She may be, asking forgiveness for the fact that they had to keep a straight face, but she spread a little joy in the office. So I think there's nothing to forgive. So you are forgiven, Kerry.
Is there a stapler on your desk, Matt? Because if there is,
Yes.
I would be very, very worried.
Yes, but I'm not taking my top off.
Are you not?
Yet. This is straight out of the Beano, isn't it? My problem with this, though, however, who's putting rocket salad on a Hawaiian pizza? It's not making it any better at all, and you're not fooling anyone. It's still a pizza. It's not a healthy pizza just because you've got rocket salad on it.
Rocket tastes nice. It's all peppery.
No, it doesn't. Rocket tastes of nothing at all. Am I right, Nige? That's right. Rocket tastes of nothing at all.
Rocket is all peppery and nice.
No, it's not. It's awful. It just tastes of leaf. And also, management thinking they're better than everyone else. What a surprise. Although not at the BBC, obviously. We all love the management.
Keep digging.
And so I am going to forgive.
Very good. Well, you see, okay, well, that's an interesting point. So it's a selection of hams, some pineapple and a sprinkling of rocket. Does that...
A Hawaiian retro pizza. I've never really liked the idea of that. So the idea of Teresa wearing a Hawaiian and pineapple up her orifices, that's good news. And she sounds as though she deserved it. And by the way, Deadly won't be listening because he'll be in the pub. Sorry, the cafe at the moment. So if we don't tell him, we could staple because his jacket's in there.
Oh, really? Oh, superb.
Such japes at the end of term.
I know. And not even Easter. So I definitely forgive, all of them. And I think that's a fantastic. And really, you just shouldn't be so authoritarian and horrible. What you give out, you get back in life.
All right. That was our Confessions podcast. Let us know who you forgave, but most importantly, tell us your tale. confessions@bbc.co.uk on an email, or you can go via the website. Thank you very much indeed, and more next week.